welcome everybody to another bus build video. This is episode number 6 of our series, and in this video we are going to be insulating our bus, and we're going to be doing it in a very unconventional way. Now, after watching that intro, you may be asking yourself, are they really going to use a spray foam out of a can to insulate an entire bus? And the answer to that question is yes. We are going to be using a DuPont Great Stuff Gaps and Crack expanding foam out of the can to insulate our entire bus. There were a lot of reasons for this decision, and I will go over all of those. Okay, so the main reason we chose spray foam out of the can was cost. Now, if you've ever done a van build or bus build, or you're doing one now, you know that there's a few really popular options for insulation. You've got natural wool, spray foam professionally sprayed, and then XPS foam boards. Those are, I'd say your top 3 most popular options, and they all have benefits and drawbacks, but I just want to look at the cost right now. Wool is going to be the most expensive, and that was something that we kind of just crossed off the list from the start. Spray foam professionally done for our bus probably would have been between $500 and $1,000, depending on who we had do it. And then XPS foam would have cost us around $500 because we would have need 12 to 13 sheets to do our bus after cutting and waste and everything like that. And at the time, this being built during the pandemic, building materials were super expensive, so foam boards 2-inch thick were $40 per board. So for us, we ended up going with the cans, and it cost us $2.75 per can because we bought them in quantities greater than 12, and we ended up using 90 cans total. So that put our bill at about $250, which saves some money over those other options. Now, like I said earlier, you're going to have drawbacks and benefits with all of these different insulation types, and that's the same thing with the Great Stuff foam. And that probably brings up a question that many people have is, what are you getting for an insulation value? Are you getting as good of an insulation value as you are with the other types of insulation? And I think after applying this, that really has to do with how well you apply the foam. If you're very careful and meticulous, you're going to get a great insulation value. Now, as to whether or not this foam is an open cell or closed cell foam, I went to Great Stuff's website and just typed in closed cell into the Q&A section, and you can see here that someone had a question regarding this foam compared to other foams, in which Great Stuff responds that this foam is in fact a closed cell foam. So that should give some reassurance to anybody who thinks that this might be an open cell foam, and that's why the cost per can is so cheap. It is in fact a closed cell foam. With it being a closed cell foam, it should compare neck and neck with an XPS foam and a professionally sprayed foam, which typically give you an R value of 6 per 1 inch depth of your foam. So I just want to go over the process of applying the foam to the wall, because it really is that. It's a large, long process. I think all in all, this took me 4 to 5 days to complete, between the walls and the ceiling. And that's just because when you do this type of foam, you're not going to be spraying one wall, like an entire wall at once. You have to do layer by layer, and you have to let each layer dry. So what I would typically do is I would start on one side of the bus, and I would do 1, 2, maybe 3 layers, but no more than that. And then I would move to the other side of the bus, and I would do 1, 2, 3 layers. And then by the time I was done with those layers, I would move back to the other side, and it would have cured. So that would allow me to just keep building on top of those existing layers until slowly but surely I would have an entire wall done. And you have to do it that way, because if you don't, then you run the risk of doing an entire wall and then the foam actually falling off of the wall. And I had this happen a few times where I just got a little bit too ambitious, trying to put too much foam on at once. And I don't know if it had to do with the fact that we were doing this in slightly colder temperatures and the foam didn't want to hold onto the wall when I put too many layers on, or if that's just how it would have reacted in warmer temperatures. But you definitely have to be careful, you have to be very meticulous, and you have to be very patient. You can't get ahead of yourself, or else you're just going to end up doing 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You're going to put some foam on, it's going to fall off. You're going to have to redo it. So I would say if someone else decides to do this method, be very patient and take your time. Understand that this is going to take a week. Maybe it'll be quicker, but I would say give yourself a week to do this process, especially depending on the size of your van or bus or build. So after my walls had dried, I moved on to the ceiling, and what I'm doing here and what I did in previous clips is I'm cutting off the dried foam. Now I'm not just cutting this off and throwing it away. I'm actually taking the large chunks and I'm stuffing them in between the studs on the ceiling and the ceiling itself. What this allows me to do is that it's one, saves how much foam I have to use and I'm not wasting as much. But what it also does is it allows me to work on the ceiling a little bit easier. The ceiling's very tough to work with because you're working against gravity. And so to have some foam for the new foam that you're spraying on to stick to really helps. So you can see here, I'm actually filling the cracks in between the dried foam and the ceiling with fresh spray foam. And I will say here that I'm using a clear hose that I connected to the nozzle of the spray can, and what this allowed me to do is hold the spray can lower and get up onto that ceiling, because one of the drawbacks of using these cans is that they have to be upside down. If you spray them right side up, you're just going to spray air out of the can and then you're going to have all of the chemicals still in the can. So you have to hold them upside down. So it's almost impossible to do this ceiling and use the entire can unless you use a hose of sorts. And I think I just used a 1/4 inch or 1/4 inch or 5/16 hose to put it onto the end of that nozzle, and it allowed the process to go so much smoother. Since I haven't mentioned anything regarding safety yet, I did just want to take some time to go over the dangers of using this product because there are a couple. When you're using this product, there's going to be a lot of toxic gases being released, and so it's super important to wear a respirator, which I'm doing here, as well as have proper ventilation. Open up all the windows, open the doors, get some airflow in there because this stuff is pretty nasty, especially in a confined space. With that being said, as this foam cures, there's going to be an off-gassing process, so you can get toxic gases being released for the next 24 to 48 hours. So as you're in the bus, you're going to want to keep things ventilated for the next couple days. Another danger is the flammability of this gas. I personally know somebody who was in a situation where they used this and there was an open flame and it created an explosive reaction and they were almost seriously injured. So I just want to say that I wasn't using any heaters. I wouldn't turn the bus on actually, and I didn't have any open flames at all when I was applying this, just because of that fear and that story of somebody that I know. I did just want to take a second to say here that if you have any questions regarding the foam insulation, I know I'm not answering everything in this video. There's a lot of things I'm going to forget. So if you have any specific questions, please feel free to ask them in the comment section below. This was something that was definitely new, I think, to the bus world or van world. I don't know how many people have used this spray foam to insulate their bus, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people with questions out there. And I'm not saying that this is the best way. I just think it was one of the best ways for us in terms of our budget, as well as how we plan to use this bus. After getting the entire bus done and looking at the final product here, I will say that I have no regrets in using the spray foam. It did take a little longer than I expected. It took a few more cans than I expected, but the final product was really good, and I think it's going to serve us well in how we plan to travel in our bus. As always, thank you so much for taking the time out to watch this video. We hope you not only enjoyed it, but we hope you learned something from it.